and welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration diaspora. We are discussing our module on historicizing South Asian migrations through case studies of select literary texts written by authors from South Asia. So, we would continue from our previous lecture and our discussion on Shyam Silvaduri's Funny Boy before we move on to a new topic today. So, Funny Boy by Shyam Silvadurai, as we were already discussing, it reflects the complex dynamics of cultural survival for a minority community in the context of displacement, and it offers a nuanced portrayal of the Tamil refugees and their quest for maintaining their identity. For the protagonist, the little boy that we see as, the child protagonist, and the entire narrative is seen through his and his family's lens. For this child RG and his family, migration represents both hope and loss. On the one hand, it is enabling them to find a safer place and escape the immediate violence, the imminent violence. On the other hand, it means losing one's home, one's national identity, and one's sense of rightful belonging in Sri Lanka. So, who will we be? What will become of us? These are the questions that is told through the character of RG's mother, but these are questions that cannot be one individual's, apprehension. These would be the questions that kind of rung in each and every Tamil individual's mind before they had to quit their homes in Sri Lanka. These questions actually reflect, they signify collective fear, collective apprehension, and vulnerability. So, RG's mother's question captures a profound sense of displacement, even a sense of vacuum, which the entire experience of migration brings with it. So, leaving Sri Lanka means leaving behind a part of their own identity, but then also escaping persecution. RG's journey in understanding himself is significantly influenced by the ethnic divisions that surround him in Sri Lanka. So we see that it is a coming of age story also. This child is growing up during violent times, and it's a journey towards self discovery, discovering human facets, discovering bestial possibilities in humans, as well as kind of understanding his own sexuality. So, kind of a rite to passage, we can see. And as this Tamil boy is growing up in a Sinhalese majority country, he begins to notice the subtle and overt signs of discrimination, prejudice, and violence, which all of which complicate his own understanding of where he fits within the larger fabric of Sri Lankan society. RG's confrontation with ethnic divisions happen when he faces discrimination at school. So RG is attending a prestigious school in Colombo and begins to see how ethnic identity influences the way the students are treated, depending on whether the student comes from a Tamil background or a Sinhalese background. The treatment is differential. The Tamil students are often ridiculed or sidelined by the Sinhalese majority, creating a sense of alienation. And this alienation is very deeply felt and very well represented through RG's psyche. So, a key moment of realization comes when RG's Tamil friend is humiliated and insulted by their Sinhalese peers. So, this is a moment where, when truth dawns on you, the fact that you are not like most of the people in your immediate society, and you are a minority population. So, RG internalizes this moment of ethnic division even as a child, and recognizes that despite his efforts to belong to his school among his friends, his Tamil identity will set him apart forever in a hostile environment. So, hostility starts showing in microcosmic spaces such as schools, right? Schools, classroom spaces show all these differentiations, these discriminations very loudly, very strongly. RG notes, I quote, I had come to realize that being different meant that you could not be part of the whole. So there is something called the whole, and the whole expects you to act in terms of certain, dictats, codes of conduct. It could be language, it could be practices and habits that define this whole, and it also defines the nation in a way. The homogeneous practices that shape the quintessential culture of Sri Lanka. And RG notes that he cannot be defined through those set of cultural codes. So he is different. So being different meant that you do not belong to the whole. The homogeneous practices that make up the Sri Lankan, the fabric of Sri Lankan nation state, do not apply to RG by virtue of the fact that he is not a Sinhalese but a Tamil. So this statement itself highlights RG's growing understanding that being Tamil in Sri Lanka is inherently different. He will always be seen as a different child, and it foreshadows the conflict owing to a minoritized identity that he will henceforth continue to experience. And along with that minoritized identity comes the baggage of hardship, the difficulty of having to explain yourself again and again, more so as he additionally also starts confronting his unconventional sexuality. So we see that this child RG is displaced twice over, once in terms of the national fabric, the fabric of Sri Lankan nations, common values, cherished values. And then we have his own, bodily experiences. He realizes that he is not like any heteronormal boy. His choices, his instincts are different. So that makes him all the more marginalized. One poignant moment comes when Arji's father is reprimanding him for playing with girls and for exhibiting behaviors that are not considered as so called masculine. So he is in the receiving end of, discrimination for different reasons. Firstly, he's not part of the majority social group. Secondly, he is not part of the heteronormal kind of uh, bodily experiences or heteronormal psyche or gender. So he is not masculine enough. According to his father, and so he's scolded. RG's desire for freedom, both in terms of ethnic identity and sexual expression, clashes and collides with the rigid social expectations that are built around him. So, in addition to navigating his ethnic identity, RG also confronts the complicated terrain of his sexual identity, like I already said. So, he is displaced and minoritized twice over. So, in response to his father's scolding, RG reflects, I quote, I realized that my place in the world would never be the same again, that everything would be different from now on, unquote. So he realizes that he would have to carve out his own identity. He is not like the most of the people, not only the rest of the people, but most of the people. There is a pre-given set of practices or prescribed set of rules that people follow when they have to be a part of a society. And he cannot really identify with some of these practices. So his place in the world would never be something very comfortable, something kind of given on a platter to him. He would constantly have to justify his position. This quote emphasizes the dual pressures on RG, the conflict the definitely the ethnic war that is going on, as well as the internal conflict of navigating his sexual identity in a very conservative heteronormative society. So the outer conflict and the inner conflict kind of resonate, and that gives a very peculiar experience to a growing up child. So in Funny Boy, ethnic identity and sexual identity are deeply interspersed, they are intertwined together with the national conflict between Tamils and Sinhalese, kind of worsening, exacerbating RG's internal struggles that he's facing while growing up each and every day. So Selvadurai masterfully demonstrates how the external conflict in the form of ethnic divisions and violence forces individuals to confront their internal conflicts about who they are and where they belong. In other words, in very extreme situations, in the extremities of situations, we come to face or face up to who we are, start asking ourselves very fundamental questions regarding who we are and what we want from life, where we belong. We generally take life for granted till we are on the edge, we are facing an extreme kind of situation. So for RG, the tension between the Tamil identity and his sexual identity, these two kinds of tensions together make his search for belonging even more fraught with tension. The fisherman conflict in the Park Strait represents a clear violation of both the economic and the human rights of those that are involved. It is a theme, this fisherman competition and conflict is a theme which resonates with the personal tragedies that are depicted in Shyam Selvadurei's Funny Boy. So, just as the Tamil characters in the novel experience persecution, displacement, and economic hardship, we see that in the real life conflict, in the real world conflict, in the Park Strait, disproportionately affects the Tamil communities on both sides of the border. So, on both sides of the border, the Tamils are disproportionately affected around this Park Strait issue. So, for many fishermen, their boats are their only source of income. This is something I have been talking about in my previous lecture. They are often very poor people, and their only position in a way is their boat. So when these boats are seized or destroyed by authorities upon discovering any kind of illegal activities, it leaves their families without any means of survival, often pushing the fishermen communities into further poverty. The confiscation of boats, which is extended, so the confiscation of boats, extended periods of detention of the fishermen, and a lack of legal recourse, all of these factors compound and add up to their economic violations, creating a cycle of poverty and dependence which is hard to escape. In Funny Boy, RG's family contemplates the possibility of fleeing Sri Lanka, much like the refugees in the real world who would cross the Park Strait in search of safety. The novel reflects the economic vulnerability of the minoritized communities, the minority communities, and it heightens during the civil war and the political instability around them. For many Tamil fishermen and refugees, the cycle of persecution still continues. Even after crossing the borders, the refugees face very limited rights. So, after coming to India, life is not immediately a very positive picture. They face the experience of refugeehood, which means limited access to resources, limited rights, poor living conditions, and economic marginalization because they are not a part of the core citizenry. This cycle is echoed in the experiences of the Tamil families in Funny Boy, where displacement does not bring any immediate sense of freedom, but rather a new set of challenges and problematics are associated with it. So, Amnesty International estimates that between 2015 and 2020, over 500 Indian fishermen were detained by Sri Lankan authorities, with many of them spending months in detention before being released. And that too, one should remember that these people, hail from the poorest of the poor backgrounds. So destitute, almost very poor people who are kind of further destroyed once they are detained and their boats are, confiscated. Tamil migration and displacement due to Sri Lankan civil war is a topic that has been explored in various post colonial literary works, with each of these works offering a unique lens into the lived experiences of the refugees. Shyam Selvadurais Funny Boy is one such novel which focuses on the personal and intimate narratives of migration, whereas others, including Michael Ondaatje's Running in the Family, offer a broader reflection on diasporic identity of a populace from Sri Lanka. So, the Sri Lankan diaspora is something that Ondaatje is more interested in depicting through his artworks, and searching for one's belonging in the diasporian community. So, together, all these works help in painting the multifaceted vignettes, the multifaceted portraits of Tamil migration in post colonial literature. So, there is this gamut of artworks produced by different authors that give us, some idea of what the Tamils underwent while migrating or while emigrating from Sri Lanka. In post colonial literature, Tamil migration is often depicted through the lens of trauma, loss, and the search for identity. So, works such as Funny Boy stand out for their focus on the personal and intimate narratives of migration, whereas other works, including Running in the Family and Anil's Ghost, delve into the broader effects of colonialism, civil war, as well as the questions of identity and belonging in diaspora. Whereas the broader post colonial narratives often focus on the macro level effects of migration and displacement, Funny Boy brings the issue down to the intimate, individual, personal level, showing how conflict and migration shape personal identity, family dynamics, and childhood development. So, we get a very rich perspective through Funny Boy, and this is very similar to Bapsi Sidhwa's Cracking India, because in both these novels we have the experience coming through the perspective, from the perspective of a different child. So, the narrator protagonist is in no way someone who is a state actor, very far from it. So, in Cracking India, we have a disabled female child from a Parsi community, which is also a minority community in Lahore. And here in Funny Boy, we have a gay child. He's probably not a heterosexual child, and he is a minor. He is a little child. He's starting to discover his own body, and that he's not like other boys. And then he is a Tamil in Sri Lankan society, which makes him a part of the minority social group. So it becomes all the more interesting that these voices are coming from very unusual spaces. The prism, through which light is thrown on the narrative of civil war in Sri Lanka, or partition of India. These prisms are very these prisms are positioned in very unusual, very unconventional positions and directions. So, RG's experiences reflect the emotional and psychological toll or impact of the ethnic conflict, the riots, and the looming prospect of becoming a refugee in a new land. So, from here, we move on to our next topic today within the same lecture, which is the other border, which is fraught with ethnic conflict and refugee movements. we are going to discuss the India Myanmar border. The India Myanmar border is not just a line on a map, it is a site of ongoing migration, ethnic conflicts, as well as political tensions that have deep historical roots. The India Myanmar border stretches over almost more than 1,500 kilometers, almost 1,643 kilometers. So, this border cuts through Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, and Mizoram and connects to Myanmar's Chin and Sagaing regions. The terrain is marked by dense forests, mountainous areas, and river systems which challenge border management and infrastructure development, and it in a way enables it in a way kind of facilitates illegal migration also, which is a constant and ongoing process. Historian Benedict Anderson notes that mountainous borders, such as those between India and Burma, do not divide people but are spaces where multiple identities thrive. So, here we would like to hearken back the different critical discussions we have on borderland culture, where borderland people and borderland habitats are not really attached to their respective mainland culture so much. So, even if they belong within the boundaries of a certain nation state, they somehow identify more with the abutting culture, the culture that is immediately adjacent to them, but perhaps belongs to another nation. Similarly, the adjacent culture also does not quite identify so much with its, respective nation state, and although it has an affiliation with a particular nation, the borderlands are a peculiar heterotopia, a third space in themselves in terms of practices. Language, clothing, and other everyday habits. And they are a very shared space. They are a microcosm that is complete in themselves. They are very much like a third space, right? A very thriving kind of life that is, in a way, cut off from the mainland habitats, from the mainland politics, even. In the case of India Myanmar border, the border is home to a diverse range of ethnic groups, many of whom straddle both sides of the border. So, this is also something we see, that borders are often quite porous, and people keep moving across both sides of the border as a part of their almost a part of their regular habit. And oftentimes, if we look at the localized culture, it is meant for their sustenance, for their survival. Some people are setting up their bazaar or their market, on one side of the border. At the close of the day, they move to the other side where they have their houses. Sometimes people come very frequently across the border to sell their commodities. So, some of these, movements facilitate business. They are support living. So, we see that borders are usually very porous and they are not very well defined. Ethnic groups that are straddling across the India Myanmar border include the Chin, Kuki, Mizo, Naga, as well as others who share cultural, linguistic, and historical ties, something that predate the formation of modern nation states. Despite national boundaries, these communities maintain cross border familial and economic connections, often traveling freely between the two countries. As both nations seek to maintain security and stability, they also navigate the volatile relationships and kind of a very multifaceted and sensitive history, rather, histories of the ethnic communities that live along the border. So, there are so many different kinds of histories that are part of the borderland culture, and they are all as valid as the other. So these places are definitely very delicate, very sensitive. They are volatile, and they are fraught, often fraught with tensions. So works of historians such as Thant Main Tew and literary figures such as Amitabh Ghosh help us understand the deep cultural and political entanglements that define a border. A border can never be clear cut because the repercussions, the consequences of drawing a border, which is by and large national decisions. So, two nations decide, or larger authorities decide to draw borders in certain ways, but such borders intercept human activities, human living, human culture. And so, there is, on the one hand, the border on the pen and paper at the cartographic level, and on the other hand, we have a very live and lived experience of a border, which is never very clear cut. The human activities never let the borders remain something that wall off two people or two societies that have very similar habits and culture. Usually, the borderland culture is very unified underworld in its own right, a microcosm in its own right, beyond the defined nation states. The fact that borderlines are never a constant, natural, and ahistorical can be understood from the fact that if we look at Bengal's history, Bengal's borders were redrawn 5 times before 1947. The northwestern provinces were taken out of the presidency of Bengal in 1835, in which Arakan became a part of Burma. Then 9 districts from the east split off from Bengal to form the province of Assam. Assam was born out of Bengal in 1874 when 9 districts were split off from Bengal. And then Chittagong and Chittagong Hill Tracts transferred from Bengal to Assam further in 1892. And then we have the first partition of Bengal by Lord Curzon, the Curzon partition, which separated East Bengal from Assam in 1905. And further, when this division was revoked in 1911, we see that Bihar and Orissa were both removed from the province of Bengal, the presidency of Bengal. So, the Government of India Act that was passed in 1935 was responsible for completely separating Burma from India. So, we see that there is a history of togetherness, and then certain decisions by the authorities create separate states, create separate provinces. The border lines are redrawn and they are never constant, throughout history. So, historian Thant Main Tew observes, I quote, "For the Naga, Chin, and other hill tribes, the border has always been porous. It is only now, with modern statehood, that new walls have been erected between people who have long considered themselves as part of one community." Unquote. So, ongoing ethnic conflicts within Myanmar, particularly in the Chin and Rakhine states, have led to significant refugee movements across the border into India. Over a period of many decades, both Chin and Rohingya refugees have crossed into Mizoram and Manipur seeking asylum from persecution, especially during periods of military crackdowns in Myanmar. In this regard, Anne Talbot writes, I quote, "The India Burma border has seen more than just national disputes. It has borne witness to the suffering of people caught between two nations and histories not of their own making." So, the human impact of border, basically. On the one hand, we have these demarcations which come as a result of very elitist political decisions. The delegates from two nations, a very select, exclusive conclave is responsible for drawing and redrawing these borders and boundaries. And on the other hand, we have the grassroots people. How such a decision comes top down, it has a vertical impact on the people, especially who are at the tail end of this whole process, people who are from the destitute sections of any society, who hardly have any decision, hardly have any agency in understanding, in determining which side of the border they belong to. So, I mean, people are suffering, they're caught in the crossfire of two nations and two histories not of their own making, like Ian Talbot would write. So the border has grown in strategic importance for both India and Myanmar. India's Look East policy emphasizes stronger economic and trade ties with Southeast Asia, making the India Myanmar border crucial for regional connectivity. In this regard, Bertil Lintner writes, I quote, the India Myanmar border remains one of the least regulated but most critical regions for trade and security in South Asia. Unquote. The region has historically been a site of political tension involving ethnic insurgencies on both sides of the border. Extremist groups such as the NSCN, full form being National Socialist Council of Nagaland. So, NSCN means National Socialist Council of Nagaland, which is a Naga militant and separatist group, and then the Chin National Army. These, extremist groups have sought greater autonomy or independence in the borderland area, often leading to armed conflicts and resulting in periods of mass migration and cross border violence. So, with this, we come to the end of our lecture here today. Let's meet in our lecture with a new text and a new set of discussions. Thank you.